go. So good evening. I'm joined this evening by Ms. McCauley, one of our school counselors, and she's going to introduce our guest speaker, who we're very happy to have with us tonight.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Gene Rogers here tonight with us. He is the Senior Financial Aid Counselor over at Molloy College. Gene has spent the last 25 years working specifically in college financial aid area, spending the majority of his time at colleges on Long Island. He is well versed on college aid programs that directly affect students and their families, including need-based grant programs, federal grant programs, state and various loan programs. Gene is currently the financial aid officer at Molloy College and has been there since 2006. Gene also is the Long Island representative for the New York State Association for Financial Aid Administrators and does plenty of advocating for state and federal college aid programs with local legislators from Albany and Washington, D.C. On a personal note, Gene is married with 2 kids, 13 and 9, and he also plays bass for a 80s cover band and is an avid Mets and Jets fan. I don't know if that wins him any points with anyone, but I also had a fun fact that Gene's dad also taught at North Babylon in the 80s?
70s, 80s.
70s, 80s. So that's actually something I'm sure someone knows who his dad was. His financial aid career began with NYIT in 1995. He moved over to Vanderbilt University in 2004 and then to Molloy College in 2006. And he is here tonight to give you guys a wonderful presentation. I will be monitoring the chat, but I'm going to hold off answering and presenting any questions to Gene until the end. I'm pretty confident that once you hear the presentation, it will answer your questions, but if not, we will definitely ask Gene at the end, okay? Gene, it's all yours.
Okay. All right. Good evening, folks. Appreciate the folks here at North Babylon inviting me to give a presentation on the wonderful world of financial aid. So I certainly will do that. Before I do have a PowerPoint that obviously I don't know if it's going to be posted on the school's website that families can access. So obviously that's perfectly fine with me. So you don't have to kind of take as detailed notes there. I did want to just kind of circle back. Obviously, thanks for the introduction there. I bring up my experience with financial aid, obviously being in it for the past 20 plus years at Molloy College, which has been a great experience. Prior to that, as mentioned, I was at Vanderbilt, which was also a great experience, and then NYIT. I bring that up as there's a lot of consistencies with the financial aid process, filling out the necessary forms, so forth. But also there are nuances to each institution, their own dollars that they're able to allocate. So there are some differences with awarding based on the institution. And I think my experiences and what I'll share in the presentation will highlight that as well. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint here and hopefully everyone will be able to see it. Oh, there it is. Excellent. Audio good, just thumbs up. Audio is okay, great. And PowerPoint is up. Perfect, perfect. All right, excellent. So just some 30 seconds on Molloy. Just wanted to kind of highlight a few things. Obviously been here since 2006. My wife is a Molloy grad. Nurse at Huntington Hospital. So her experience at Molloy was great. And she'll also say that new nurses coming to Huntington from Molloy are very well prepared for that career. We are a Division II sports school, majors besides nursing, education, business. When I started in 2006, we had under 2,000 students. Now we're approaching 5, so a lot of growth. We have dorms now over the last 10 years, 3 new academic buildings over the last 6 years. So a lot of great things, exciting things at Molloy. So did want to just sort of share and highlight the place I've been for the last 15 odd years. So Malloy, hopefully your sons or daughters may be thinking, and certainly it's been a great place. All right, so moving into Financial Aid 101. I'd like to start with a couple of slides that just give you information that you'll start to kind of understand as your sons, yourself, your daughters are getting financial aid packages, awards, in terms of the terminology. So things you'll start hearing is gift aid, which is grants and scholarships, money that doesn't have to be paid back, so really the good stuff. And then self-help, loans, employment opportunities, where the student has some skin in the game. When you start receiving those financial aid offers, packages, you're going to see these terms, and I just wanted you to be aware of kind of what they mean. Also, I like to start early with this pie chart that gives you a kind of sense of where the dollars are coming from. So probably no surprises, federal loans is the biggest chunk of financial aid. But the next biggest piece is coming from the college themselves. You know, the institution themselves, you know, they have the next biggest piece of the pie. And hopefully, as I go through this presentation, you're going to get some information that's going to help you get yourself sort of to the front of the line to get your hands on those dollars from the institution, whether it's merit, whether it's need-based, but ultimately they're sort of, in terms of grant dollars, the biggest provider. Also, there's federal money, there's state money, and smaller programs that fill it up. Okay, I also like to begin early with this, a little kind of funny, in terms of the image of the baby there. But what this is really trying to get across is I hear from families, from students that say, my dad makes X amount of dollars, is it even worth applying? If you're filling out the form, which we'll be talking about, the FAFSA, it's a free application. So certainly there's no cost in applying for financial aid. Now, using Malloy as an example, for those that don't know, our tuition is around $32,000 a year. So we understand that is a substantial amount for many families. But this slide illustrates is in terms of our average freshmen are receiving a financial aid package of almost $20,000, where over 16 is grant dollars, money that doesn't have to be paid back. So the takeaway is understanding that maybe that sticker price is a little bit daunting and saying, hey, is that really going to be manageable? Looking at the net price, what's really coming out of pocket, where our average freshmen are not paying $32,000, they're paying more like 16, 17, which could be more manageable for the family. So a tool that I would encourage all families, students to check out is something called the net price calculator. The net price calculator is found on the college financial aid website that your son or daughter is applying to. Go to the financial aid side, look for the tool that's called the net price calculator. And that's going to allow the student, the family, to plug in some information about the family's finances, along with the student's academics, and give you a good idea of what that financial aid package may look like. It's not going to be 100%, but it's going to give you that ballpark estimate of what the package award may look like, gives you an idea of, hey, is this a college that we should even apply to? Is it manageable, affordable? This tool is going to allow you to kind of check it off the list or keep it on the list as your son or daughter are looking to apply. And it is highly suggested to do this to give you those, give you those options. Okay, so going into the FAFSA. What is the FAFSA? Now, contrary to what you may have heard, it does not stand for the free application for stress and anxiety, even though I understand it's a anxiety-inducing process, especially if you're going through it for the first time. So hopefully I'm going to share things that lessen that. So what does FAFSA stand for? It stands for the free application for federal student aid. It is the one form that generally all colleges across the country require in order to apply for financial aid. It comes out every October October 1 is the launch date of the FAFSA. So for the interest of tonight's presentation, if we have high school seniors and their parents, you'd be filling out the 22-23 FAFSA for your son or daughter who will be starting September 22. And then it will be asking for 2020 tax information to complete the form. So you'd be filling out the 22-23 FAFSA, which launched this past October 1. And the information that FAFSA will be looking for will be based on your 2020 taxes, which is the most recent tax return information that most folks have right now. Obviously, we still have a few months left in 2021, so no one has their 21 taxes ready. FAFSA requires 2020, so you can get this information in as soon as possible. So October 1 is the launch date. Fafsa.gov is the website that you would fill out the form. It's not done, there's no paper. I will show you a prop. This is a prop paper form that came out back in the 80s and 90s. I encourage no one to ever fill out a paper version of the FAFSA. You fill it out online. You don't want to Google the word FAFSA as well, because that will actually send you in some cases to websites that charge you to fill out the form. FAFSAonline.com, FAFSA.com. It is FAFSA.gov. That's the website you go to. That's where you fill out the form. FAFSA is done each and every year. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, life changes, families, increase, income changes. So FAFSA is done each and every year for the student. October 1 is the launch date. Little kind of hint, there's maintenance that's done on the federal site, usually on Sunday mornings. So Sunday mornings is not the time to do the form. Okay, just sort of echoing things I've already said, FAFSA.gov. For the 22-23 year, so current high school seniors looking to attend college this coming September 22, you'd be filling out the 22-23 FAFSA. If we do have some juniors listening, you'd begin this process next fall. So October 1, 22, you'd be filling out for the 22-23, 23-24 academic year using 21 tax information. So in order to fill out the FAFSA, just like any other kind of online company or bank or so forth, you need to create a username password. And for FAFSA, they call it the FSA ID. So in order to log into FAFSA and complete the form, you have to create an FSA ID. Who needs to create it? The student that's applying to college. So they're filling out the FAFSA, they need to create an FSA ID. Along with the student, one parent needs to complete and create an FSA ID. So student needs to create one parent needs to create one. So if we have a traditional household, mom and dad, and the student creates an FSA ID, one parent. If both parents want to create one, that's fine, but only one is needed. And in the case of why does the parent need one? It's being used to electronically sign the FAFSA for the student. So the parent's not filling out a FAFSA. They're just creating an FSA ID, students creating an FSA ID and completing the FAFSA. So if we do have some parents that have some older children that went to college a few years ago and have an FSA ID already, that is still fine. You can still use that. But ultimately the student needs to create their own. One parent needs one as well. Okay, some changes to FAFSA for the upcoming year. Just to kind of highlight, once again, if we have folks that have gone through the process. In the past, males between 18 and 25 are required to register for selective service, and that still is the case. But in terms of financial aid administrators no longer have to verify that. So it doesn't affect financial aid process. It doesn't hold it up. Also, there was questions tied to if a student had drug convictions, that is no longer affects financial aid eligibility. So it doesn't slow it down. And reduced verification, if you're reading the slide here, I'll talk about verification as we go through, but it's just, there's less of it, but I'll explain that as we go through. And also just some acronyms are going to be changed, and also how family members attending college at the same time may be impacted as well. So just some things down the road here. Okay, there is also an app that you can get on your iPhone, on your Android, that allows you to do the FAFSA. It's called My Student Aid. My suggestion is, if you still have access to a desktop or a laptop, do the FAFSA over those devices. I find it's still easier to navigate, just easier to see, so forth, and less chance of making an error. But you can do the FAFSA on the phone. It works. I would encourage students and families to download the app regardless, more to kind of check status. The processing takes about a week to process. If there's a correction that's made on the FAFSA, you'll get an alert, and it's just good to just have it as well. But to actually do the FAFSA, I would encourage desktop or laptop if possible. Okay, as you're going through the form, top 3 FAFSA errors we find, and I could probably show you a little pile over here. I am correcting socials, that the student mixed up a number, date of birth, mixed up a month and year. Those 3 items, social security number, date of birth, correct name, causes a financial aid administrator the biggest challenge to correct. It's a time-consuming process. It slows the financial aid process. So what I would say is, as the student is about to fill out that FAFSA, get that social security card out, whatever the name the student uses. If they go by a nickname, it's the name on their social. Get the correct number, the date of birth, get that information into FAFSA. That is going to be a big plus to make sure that information is right, and it will keep things moving smooth for you. So take your time in the beginning, get those things right, and you'll be in good shape. All right, other things that you'll need to complete the form: driver's license for the student, social security card I mentioned, parents' information, W-2 forms, tax data from 2020. I mentioned that in the prior, so you'll want to have that at the ready. And then other things: untaxed income, copy of bank statements, savings account, checking accounts, if you own a business, and then other investments. Something to be mindful of: the tax data is going back to 2020. The other information tied to money that you currently have in the bank and savings and stuff like that, that is the day you file. So the day you file, in terms of, they say, how much money do you have in your checking account? I got a little hint for you. Do not fill out the FAFSA on payday, when everyone's checking account may look a little better than others. Maybe wait. I got another hint. If maybe the student is saving up to buy a car for first year of college, so he's saving up $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 that he has in his savings account, that could be money that can be omitted when filling out the FAFSA, because it's going to be gone by September when school starts. And that can be perfectly explained. If the college comes back and says, oh, there was some interest income on the tax return, and now we don't see any savings. Hey, the student bought a car for college. Oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. So these are things that you can kind of omit safely, and that's perfectly fine. As I mentioned, business. And the last bullet here may list up to 10 college codes to receive FAFSA. So what that means is, if the student has a list of colleges, hey, I want to apply to this, I want to apply to this one, you can list up to 10 initially on the FAFSA. If the student has more than 10, you have to submit those 10, wait till it processes, which is usually 3 to 5 days, and go back in and add the new ones. So you'll have to delete a few to add the new ones, but that's fine. As long as those initial 10 was submitted, they don't need another transaction. So you can take 3 off, add 3 on the second round, and that would just be fine. Okay, school deadlines. As my bio I am a diehard Met fan, so drop the ball like they did this past year. School deadlines. I mentioned October 1 is the launch date for FAFSA. Every college across the country has a priority date of when they want the FAFSA data. Some of those deadlines can be December 15th, January 1st, January 15th, so forth. So it's really your job to find out the colleges that you or your son or your daughter are looking to attend. Usually on their financial aid page, will say we want FAFSA by February 15th. Some of the more select schools, certainly the Ivy Leagues and so forth, those deadlines can be as soon as next month as well. So if there's some Ivies or schools like that, check with them. And the importance is if you meet their priority deadline, you're putting yourself at the top of the line, at the beginning of the line, where if there are dollars that come from limited sources, they could run out. And you want to make sure that you're there at the beginning so that you don't kind of get left out. So most obviously very important. October 1 is the launch date, but finding out when the schools want the FAFSA data is equally important. So check with them, check the financial aid website. If you can't find it, give them a call. When do you want FAFSA? Get it to them by that date and you'll be in good shape. Okay, so what drives the bus in terms of financial aid eligibility? What's really that? What are they looking at? What are the things that are going to determine eligibility or not? Primary income, savings from both student and parent, investments, real estate, not your home, I'll elaborate in a moment, and household size. I kind of talked about it in a second, in a few slides back. The amount of people in the family is a big determining factor in eligibility. Obviously, larger the household, more eligibility, smaller household, less eligibility. Things to be aware of. Maybe there's the student that's applying for college, maybe they have an older sister, older brother that went off to college and now is living back with mom and dad. As long as the parents provide more than half of that person's support, they can be included as part of the household. I have a little joke there. Obviously, my in-laws live part of the year with me. If there's grandparents that are living under the roof there and the parents provide more than half the support, they can be included in the household size. And that, as I mentioned, is a driver in terms of eligibility. So make sure that information is correct and you'll be off and running. Okay, digging deeper into parents' assets. Parents' income reported, parents' asset reported with the exception of home value. So your primary home, the home you live in, they do not ask what the value of that home is. That asset goes nowhere on FAFSA. So on the flip side, they're not asking about your mortgage or any things tied to your home, taxes and so forth. Your home value goes nowhere. It is not an asset that counts on FAFSA. So that could be a good thing. Obviously, living in Long Island, homes $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, that asset is not factoring into eligibility for financial aid. Also, retirement savings. If parent has 401k, 403bs, those retirement accounts are protected and they do not get asked about on FAFSA at all. The third bullet, sometimes a big surprise, is roughly about the first $45,000 of parent savings and investment do not count in the formula. So what that means, if the parents were able to have, let's just do the math easy, $50,000 in a savings account, when FAFSA goes to measure eligibility, they're going to shield the first 45K and only count. It's a good thing in terms of there's some protections there. And then what are they assessing it at? And the assessment is at 5.64, so roughly 5.5%. So just going on that, for every $100 that kind of counts in the assessment, they're saying, hey, you got to kick in $5, $6 towards the student's education. So the assets that do count, it's basically $5, $6 of every 100 that the student, that the parent has, would get imputed into the formula. Now, I don't have slides about student, The students are assessed at a much higher value and there's no protections. So if the student has $10,000 in the bank, they're going to count the 10,000 and it's assessed at 20%. So for every $100, FAFSA is saying, all right, student has to kick in $20 towards his college cost. So they definitely treat parents' assets differently from the student. Business value, less than 100 employees, FAFSA is not interested. So if you have a small business, that goes nowhere on FAFSA. Okay, savings for college. A lot of families may have 529 plans. 529 plans always counts as a student, as a parent asset. So even if it's in the student's name, it will always go on the parent side. If it's another relative, grandparent, or so forth, it goes nowhere on FAFSA. So 529s always count as a parent's asset, always a parent's asset. I'm just going to kind of pick a few things about what counts, what doesn't. Obviously, you'll have access to the PowerPoint, and this comes right from FAFSA. As you're going through it, it will kind of tell you some things. Annuities do not count. Life insurance don't count. Personal possessions don't count. Trust funds do count. That's a question I get asked. Trust fund, so forth. So that counts. The only exception is if there's some court document that says this trust only can be used for XYZ. So that's really the only exception, and that would really have to be shared with the college directly if that's the case. Child support is factored into FAFSA. There's a special section that you provide child support paid, child support received. Just wanted to share that. Independence. Now, I have one slide just about independence because sometimes questions come up on if the student should be considered independent, if he's requiring parents' information. So FAFSA has very clear definitions of who they define as an independent student. And if you read through the bullets here, basically age is number one. If the student is over 24, they're independent. If they are married, they're independent. If they have a child that they support, they're independent, or if they're a veteran of military, they're independent. If they say yes to one of those questions, when they're going to fill out the FAFSA, FAFSA is just interested in their information, nothing about parents. Now, there's some exceptions, if you read through the bullets, that are fairly unique in situations that could be dangerous for the student. Obviously, I've been doing this a long time where I've seen a lot where students, are abandoned and, really, sad situations and unfortunate situations that in those cases, they should share that information directly with the college that they're looking to apply to. They could write a letter, email, and say, hey, this is what I'm facing. And then in some instances, the colleges can sort of override FAFSA's declaration and make them independent. But it is rare and, it requires a lot of documentation by the student. But I kind of just wanted to share that because sometimes if I follow with my next slide, sometimes a parent just is refusing to provide their information, and that really ties our hands as a financial aid administrator. We have zero ability to create a real financial aid package for students that are considered dependent for FAFSA and are unable to get parents' information. We can award them a loan, but once again, it really limits us and ties our hands. So we hope that we can get the data from the parent to get that through. Principles of needs analysis. So this comes right from FAFSA. To the extent they're able, parents have primary responsibility to pay for their dependent children's education. So nowhere does it say anything about willingness. Parents have primary responsibility. FAFSA is going to measure the parent's ability to help pay for their son or daughter's education. Students also have responsibility. And in the third bullet, families should be evaluated in their present financial condition. So probably one of the most important things I'm going to share with you tonight. Just for an example, let's say you're on the ball, you get the FAFSA done this month, next month. Then you start receiving financial aid information early part of 22, February, March. That's usually the timeline. So when you filled out FAFSA, it was asking about 2020 information. You start getting the financial aid information, and then something changes in the family. Maybe dad takes a different job, making considerably less money. So where you received that initial financial aid package, things looked okay. Now that life sort of threw your curveball a little bit, what is the path that you can sort of take? And that would be something that we refer to as special circumstances. If the family, if the student, something changed since the FAFSA was filled out, then in order to let the college become aware of that, the student, the family, the parent needs to write a letter, needs to make a phone call, email, something, alert the college directly. There's no place on FAFSA that allows the family to sort of write in and say, hey, dad is now working, less hours, different job, lost a job, things like that on FAFSA. This all has to be communicated directly with the college themselves. And they refer to special circumstances, professional judgment appeals, but it allows the college to award based on what's really going on now with the family, not what was going on in the past. Other things, medical expenses not covered by insurance, unusual dependent care expenses. One-time occurrence is something that we'll use special circumstances for. Maybe just, for example, family had an elderly relative that passes away, and maybe the parents received an inheritance that all of a sudden their adjusted gross income for 1 year was inflated, but it was a one-time thing. And that would be something you can share with the college and say, all right, well, my income, family income was XYZ, but it was due to this. And then they may say, okay, give us the last 2 years tax return, and we can average that and adjust the award at that point. So that's a good thing. Natural disaster, obviously, things where the weather causes issues. Close to Long Beach, even been in the field a long time, even the storm Sandy. That was, that affected a lot of people. So natural disasters could be something as well. Everything tied to the last 18 months with the pandemic, where individual families, parents lost jobs, changed jobs. It would be an appeal. It would be the same sort of process where the student, the family would write a letter, communicate with the college, let them know what's going on. And obviously, if the college can help modify, they certainly will. I do want to highlight that you do want to wait for the initial financial aid offer before you go through the route of the appeal, because maybe you're pleasantly surprised. Maybe, hey, okay, this is what's coming in, so that you don't have to go through those extra hoops to appeal. But obviously, that would be the path to take. Okay, Irs Fsa Concept. So I mentioned this briefly, the verification selection. As you're going through FAFSA, they're going to be asking questions about tax year data. You'll get to a certain point where, depending on how you filed your tax return, I'm really speaking to the parent, you'll get an option to link the data from the IRS right to FAFSA. And that does two things. That kind of limits a mistake, transposing the number from the tax return to the FAFSA. The information just links, it fills it in, and you don't have to kind of worry about it. And then also, once the FAFSA gets submitted, roughly about 30% of the FAFSAs get selected for this verification process. And what's going on is FAFSA, the Department of Ed, is basically putting the responsibility on the college to double check the data that was provided on FAFSA. So in order for us to do that, we have to then reach out to the student, reach out to the family and say, provide us with a copy of the tax return, fill out this form that allows us to double check your household size. So we have to push that out and just check that the FAFSA was filled out correctly. And it's not a overly time consuming process, but it is it's a process. So if you do the link, the chances are definitely reduced that the application gets selected. It still can happen, it's not automatic, but at the very least, you wouldn't have to send in your copy of the 1040, things like that. So it cuts it down a bit if you're able to use it. So I suggest using it if it's available. It will save you some time on both sides, filling it out and then on the flip side. Okay, a little more math for tonight. Understanding how financial aid awards are calculated. This formula that you're looking at, every college across the country uses this formula to really determine the awards and more specifically need-based eligibility. So I just want to spend a minute explaining that. So it's cost of attendance minus expected family contribution equals financial need. So what does that mean? On the left, you see tuition and fees, which would be a direct cost from the college. So just using Malloy, for example, about $30,000 tuition fees. Books and supplies. Now, depending on the major, student may be nursing, business, education. So the books and supplies, it's going to be an estimate. It's a variable. So we will plug in an estimate, $1,000. We're just saying, okay, that may be the cost. Room and board, if the student lives on campus, direct cost to the college. But also if the student's living with mom and dad, we're going to assign a value because it's still costing the parents some money for the student to live at home. Transportation, same thing. Student needs a car, back and forth, maintenance. We're going to plug in a value, and all colleges do this. And then miscellaneous expenses, need clothes, need other things. So we create this overall cost of attendance. Some colleges may say budget. We say cost of attendance. And then the minute you submit the FAFSA, you'll get a confirmation email that will contain a few things. First and foremost, it tells you if you qualify for a federal grant. It tells you if there's some loan eligibility, but it also tells you what the family contribution number is. And that number could be $0 or $100,000. And when the financial aid office gets that information, they look at the cost, then they have to look at that family contribution. And if there's some remaining dollars, once that's figured out, that allows the college to award need-based grants, need-based loans, need-based work opportunities, need-based eligibility. So I have sort of a slide that kind of illustrates cost minus family contribution equals financial need. And I got a couple of examples for you. I have a private college, a little bit pricier than Malloy. Their cost is around $50,000. Family contribution for this family is $25,000. So just for example, this student that applied, bright student, was getting a $10,000 merit scholarship from the college. He also played baseball for the college team, is getting a $10,000 athletic scholarship. So right now he's getting $20,000 from the college. The institution, the financial aid office gets this in. They're not deciding on the merit money. They're not deciding on the athletic scholarship, but they get that information and it has to go into the package. So they plug it in, students getting $20,000. They minus that, the student has $5,000 still left in remaining need. So the college could, if their budget allows, to give the student a $5,000 need-based grant to bridge the gap. Now, flipping it over to a public college like a SUNY or a CUNY, cost is going to be considerably less, obviously. Same family, same student, family contributions, $25,000. This student may be getting that merit scholarship, maybe getting that athletic, but would not be eligible for any need-based eligibility just because of the math. So as you're going through this process and getting the financial aid information, this will be there. This will be there for you. And you could sort of understand, oh, you know, I'm not going to qualify for need-based here, but maybe at the other institution. Okay, pivoting over to whose information goes on FAFSA. We have traditional household, mom, dad, student. Mom, dad, student's information goes on FAFSA. Next one, student lives with mom. Mom is divorced from birth father. FAFSA only looks at the student, the parent that the student lives with. in terms of financial information. So the student may have a great relationship with dad, but dad and mom are split. It's student and mom only that goes on FAFSA. Switched it up. Third one, student lives with dad, it's student and dad only. Student lives with mom and mom is remarried. This one, when I'm doing this out there in the auditoriums, this usually gets the groans from the audience. If mom is remarried, it's student, mom, and stepdad. So step parents information is required on FAFSA. FAFSA is measuring household income. Obviously, stepdad's information is that is living on the same roof. They're going to measure that. When I get questions, my only tip is stay dating, maybe. So that gets a chuckle, hopefully. All right, who is parent on FAFSA? Biological parent, adoptive parent, step parent who is married to and residing with custodial parent. So that is parent on FAFSA. Who is not parent? Other relatives, grandparents. I hear from families, I hear from students. I live with, grandparent. Shouldn't I put their information on the FAFSA? Absolutely not, unless grandparent have legally adopted that child. Now, they may be providing resources and so forth, but for FAFSA, they want parent, or at least they need to know what the story is. So this may be a conversation the student has to have with the college that they're attending or they're looking to attend. But in terms of this is parent, just bio parent, adoptive parent, step parent who's married to and residing with custodial parent. Just more on this, a rule change over the last few years where we have had both birth parents living under the same roof with the student. Both their informations are required on FAFSA, even if they're unmarried. We have birth dad, birth mom living under the same roof with the child. Both information are required. Okay, everything I've been talking about is FAFSA related. There is another form though. There's a form called the CSS profile. Some of the select schools require this form. The Ivy Leagues for sure. I don't know any other college on Long Island that requires it, but there is another form. And my suggestion is you want to find out if the college that your son or daughter is looking to apply to requires the profile. By all means, fill it out, because those schools that require it have a lot of their own money. And the only way to get it is if you fill out this profile form. Now, the profile digs deeper than FAFSA. It asks about home value. It asks questions about other assets that don't count. There's a cost associated with filling out the form. But as I mentioned, if the college that your son or daughter is looking to attend require the profile, you got to fill it out. And it's lined up in terms of just like FAFSA. October 1, it comes out. And whenever they require that deadline, just like FAFSA, they may say, December 15th, January 15th, you want to get that information into them. But it digs deeper, but it is required if the college asks for it. So check with them. It's usually on their financial aid page on the website. Okay, a timeline on the process. So you fill out the form. You get an instant email from FAFSA once you've submitted it, usually within a minute. I always recommend if you don't see that email, you should log back into FAFSA. Maybe you forgot to hit the last button. The financial aid office starts getting the information a week or two thereafter. Now, until the student's been accepted by admissions, that's when the financial aid office will begin the awarding. We will not really look at the FAFSA until admissions sends us information, says, Joe Smith has been accepted, please award him. And then we see, oh, we got his FAFSA, we connect the dots, we send out a communication, hard copy letter, electronic information as well. Most colleges, we continue to send hard copy. Families like to kind of put it on the kitchen table and review things, but some may not. In certain instances, once you get that information, you'll have to submit documentation if the student was selected for verification. If you did the IRS link, maybe that cuts it down. But if that's being requested, you need to provide it. Show me the money. So everything here is what makes up a financial aid package. You have federal grants, state grants, institutional grants, scholarships, loans, work study scholarships, alternative, all components of financial aid. So I hear people talk about it's not just one thing, financial aid, it's many things. So hopefully when you start receiving financial aid awards, it's more from the top than the bottom. Starting with scholarships, the admissions office is the ones that determine merit based on grades and why you write the essay. So the scholarships are determined by admissions. That information routes over to the financial aid office. We kind of look at it, see what the math tells us, see if we could still offer additional need-based eligibility, and we kind of take it from there. Big money goes to freshmen. So what that means is when you start receiving financial aid awards, specifically from like private four-year colleges, you may get, hey, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 merit scholarship to come to that college for the 4 years. If the student elects to go elsewhere, and for good reason, maybe, when they go to maybe transfer back, those scholarships, in a lot of cases, is greatly reduced. So kind of knowing that is important. And these are questions you can raise with the financial aid office, with the admissions office at the colleges, and say, all right, if student ends up transferring, so forth, what may be the drop off? In most cases, it is big. Private sources, obviously a lot of websites out there that students can look for private scholarship opportunities. Fastweb.com has been around for quite a while. Sally Mae is a lender, but they have a search engine. I'm sure the guidance office at North Babylon has numerous resources as well. But I did want to point out, maybe mom or dad works for a company that has a scholarship. So that's something to check. Maybe your local church, maybe the library. In the neighborhood, maybe something to check out as well. But obviously there's opportunities, the big companies, the Coca-Colas, the McDonald's of the world. You go on, Fastweb, they can, is worth kind of checking out for sure. I do say, obviously there's maybe emails and stuff sent home. You'd never want to pay to apply for an outside scholarship. That's a big red flag. A couple of quotes I see on some literature: you've been selected by a group you never heard of. You're a finalist in a contest you never entered. So they should just get deleted or thrown out because they're definitely not something to spend time on. All right, digging into the federal grants, the Pell Grant is the big federal grant. You do FAFSA. It really is the application for Pell. Right now, maximum Pell is $6,500. SEOG is another federal grant. Now, the big difference with SEOG from Pell is SEOG can run out. So if you get the FAFSA in that priority deadline, if you are getting the Pell Grant, you can be considered for SEOG if the school still has some allocation. So getting it in early is going to certainly help with being included for SEOG. Institutional grants I've kind of talked about. Obviously, admissions, awards, academic. Maybe the student plays a musical instrument. Maybe the music department offers some money, athletic. And then it gets down to the financial aid office with the need-based grants. And it always goes back to that math problem I kind of showed you. Cost minus family contribution equals need. If there's some need left over, financial aid can jump in and offer. So student can definitely get both. Maybe only gets merit, but can certainly be included. CAP is a state grant. If the student's looking at New York State school, public or private, at the end of the FAFSA, they'll get a link to apply for TAP. If they somehow miss it, usually they'll get an email directly from the state agency, which is HESC.ny.gov to apply, but it's specific to New York State schools, public or private. The Excelsior Scholarship has been around for a few years here. This is also state run. So this is limited to SUNYs and CUNYs. I do not work for a SUNY and CUNY, so I don't have all the information on these, but I do know that it's based on adjusted gross income of the family. Right now, the cutoff is around 125. I don't know if it's going up a little bit for next year. Few strings attached to it. Some of the kind of myths about Excelsior is it's not sort of an entitlement. It is a limited pool of money. If you look at my bullet towards the end, in terms of its available funds. So you apply. If you qualify, you may get it, but it is not guaranteed. And I know that sometimes was a bit of a myth going around over the last few years, but certainly it's something to look at. This can all be found on the HESC website, hesc.ny.gov, same website you apply for TAP. Also through the state agency, hesc.ny.gov, this is a program designed for students that are ineligible to fill out the FAFSA. To do FAFSA, you must be a US citizen or permanent resident. If you do not meet those requirements, you cannot fill out FAFSA. Over the last few years, there's been a program through the state, which you can find out hesc.ny.gov/stream. And in certain instances, students that have resided in New York State that don't meet FAFSA conditions can get some state money similar to TAP, in some cases TAP. But it's a program that's fairly new. We encourage students that don't meet FAFSA requirements to check it out and see where that takes you. Federal loans, everyone qualifies for a federal loan if they do a FAFSA. First year students can borrow up to $5,500, second year $65,000, third and fourth $75,000. These are guaranteed loans. Interest rate is relatively low, under 4%. These reset every July 1, so next year could be a little different. It can be broken down into subsidized or unsubsidized. Subsidized is need-based, going back to that formula. So depending on the math, maximum need subsidized loan is $3,500. So that means the government's paying the interest while the student's in school. But no repayment is required while the student's enrolled. Student has 10, 20 years to pay these loans back. But it is capped. So that's sometimes the big surprise where students cannot take out what they need. If the family is looking to borrow federally to cover full cost, there is another loan called the PLUS loan, not as good as the other one. Interest rate's a bit higher, over 6%, but the student family can borrow all the necessary funds to cover cost. There is a credit component to it. It's a very lenient credit check, but there is a credit check nonetheless. And it is not always an option that's pushed out by all schools, but it is available. So if you don't see it on your financial aid packages, you could always ask about it. It's called the PLUS loan. Start Here, Get There is a website that's run through the state. I just bring it to your attention. I do some volunteer work. We've been doing FAFSA completion events virtually this year. The next one's coming up next month. You can sign up through this website. It's free. You basically will be using Zoom. We put you in a Zoom room and get you some FAFSA help if you need it. Obviously, we just wanted to didn't want to share that opportunity. Everything I've talked about federally, you can find on studentaid.ed.gov, Pell Grants, SEOG, federal loans, all that stuff. Easy to understand language on this website. Highly recommended. Sally Mae has the search engine for outside scholarship opportunities. There's numerous others, FastWeb, and obviously I'm sure the guidance office has other suggestions as well on outside scholarship opportunities. Start Here, Get Here. Obviously the FAFSA completion, but also some videos, some other tips on state money. I highly recommend checking that out. And my last slide is just my two kids a few years ago, encouraging all students, families to get that FAFSA filled out as soon as possible. So with that, I appreciate the time, patience, and hopefully I didn't go too far over my allocated time. I'm going to stop my share now. All right.
Thank you so much, Gene. I don't see any questions in the chat. I'm not sure if anyone has anything that they want to add. Give it a second. Gene, thank you so very much. That was so much information.
A lot of information.
It is. It's so much. And I definitely would encourage anyone who wants a one-to-one to definitely attend the November 18th, because I think that's a great opportunity for people to be able to
You do have to register for that. Obviously, it's conditioned on we have financial aid volunteers from all across the state. So we've been able to manage them great. But you do have to register for those, yes.
And the presentation as well as the video will be on the website. So for those of you who attended, and tell your friends, let them know it's there, and definitely you can always see it again, because I think the presentation is always good to look at it after the fact when all the questions start spinning in your head.
I did see a couple of questions pop up.
Okay, perfect.
I can just read them. Does everyone qualify for the Parent Plus loan? Have to do the FAFSA, and then the parent needs to apply for that plus loan. There is a credit check to that. It is, as I mentioned, a very lenient credit check, but one nonetheless. Digging deep, they really just look at FICO score. There's no debt to income that they're looking at, but there is a credit check. And if the family is any case, turned down, then the student is allowed to borrow a little bit more in the federal loans, like up to $4,000 additional in those cases. I think there was a question about if your son has yet to apply for college. Certainly you could still apply. Many, Malloy has kind of rolling admission. We're constantly admitting students, and filling out the FAFSA is now's the time. Now's the time for 22-23. It just was launched October 1. So certainly getting it done October, November is ideal. If you're a junior, you can't fill out the FAFSA till October 1, 2022. I got my, I'm forgetting where I am. Yeah, so it would be 2022. If you really want to get going, you could create that FSA ID. That can be done early.
One parent asked about the money in the son's savings account for a car. Is it able to change the FAFSA once it's submitted?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. You could make, if you inadvertently put down an extra zero on some line there, you can go back in, and that's a change you want to make. Certainly, so you can go back in and then just make sure you submit the correction. You make the change on FAFSA, but you have to submit it, and you'll get a confirmation email. And then you could always follow up with the college and say, hey, I put down, I made the mistake, and so household size, income, and alert them to that. I see another question came in. If the parent already has a FSA ID, and there's a younger child that's just completing this, my FSA ID is good for parent. Still, both the students, if there's a junior in college and now a freshman, both those students in the family have their own FAFSA. Each student fills out their own FAFSA. That answers that question.
Looks like you got them all. Oh, no, there's one more.
I just
Oh,
saw
there's a few more.
Yeah, if you didn't do, I think I see if once you've done the FAFSA, generally you get a link to apply for TAP. If you miss the TAP link, usually HESC, which is the state agency, will email the student a week later saying, oh, apply for TAP. But you can just go into HESC and apply. So hesc.ny.gov is the TAP. I'll just put that in the. That's the TAP. If you missed my email on, I'm just putting my email in the chat too. If there's questions, maybe you're not comfortable pushing it out here. I understand that. You can hit me with an email. If your son or daughter does not have to be looking at Malloy, I'm happy to answer a question. So feel free to just hit me that way. I don't know.
There's one more question in the chat.
Okay.
Our bank accounts under the parents' names with children in trust for, are these included in the FAFSA?
Yeah, I did. I think I had a slide. Trusts are definitely, I mean, if it's in both, just split it, 50-50.
Okay.
That's the safe way to do, unless it's, if there's some court document that said this trust can only be used for XYZ, that would be the only exception.
I think we're good. Thank you so very much, Jean, for taking
Okay.
the time to help us out in North Babylon. We really are appreciative and we are thankful. And again, if you have any questions and you wanted to reach out to Jean, just take a quick picture of his email. And please note that, again, the presentation as well as the video will be on the website for your viewing.
Under guidance.
Under guidance.
Sounds good.
One more question, are deferred compensation for 57 accounts considered?
If you can, I just saw that come up. If you can email me directly, that I'm not sure what, something 457 I haven't seen. I have to research that one.
I
So
think that's railroad.
you definitely, yeah, I'm thinking, but email me. I don't want to speculate. I just want to get you the right answer.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Ms. McCauley. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.